The next round of Brexit votes are due on Tuesday. Now, last time you'll remember, Theresa May's Brexit deal was defeated by a whacking 230 votes. But this time, it's all a bit different. Instead of what's known as a meaningful vote, MPs will be presented with a motion to which they've added all sorts of amendments, asking for all sorts of different Brexit options. So what's going on, and how will you be able to make head or tail of any of it? Time to call in an expert, and who better than Dr. Hannah White from the Institute for Government. We began with a bit of jargon busting. So what exactly is the difference between the neutral motion coming up on Tuesday and the meaningful vote held earlier this month?
So what Theresa May is doing on Tuesday is something that Parliament has required her to do, in addition to her legal requirements. So the meaningful vote is legally what she has to do under the EU Withdrawal Act before she could ratify her deal that she's got with the EU. This is not that. This is what Parliament said it wanted an update from government to say what its plan was if it lost the first meaningful vote, which it's done.
OK, so the plan is being put forward. There are lots of amendments. There are more than a dozen amendments being put forward as suggestions from MPs, but not all amendments are created equal. Some are things that MPs would like the government to do, but the one from Yvette Cooper is different. Now explain why her amendment is different to everybody else's.
So what her amendment does is seeks to provide time. Time is this really precious commodity in parliamentary terms, and government normally controls it. And her amendment says that there would be time provided in the Parliament's agenda the following Tuesday the 5th of February, to talk about her piece of legislation which she wants to bring forward. She presented that this week, and that says that if the government doesn't get its deal agreed by Parliament, then it has to apply to the EU for an extension to Article 50.
There are lots of amendments down, as we've mentioned. The Speaker gets to choose which amendments are voted on. So how does he choose which amendments are voted on?
So he has to take a lot of different things into account, and one of the key things is he never explains actually how he's chosen them, and by convention his decisions are not challenged by MPs. But he takes into account things like the number of signatories to the amendments, so how much support has been expressed to them, and that's why MPs are often keen to get them tabled quickly so that other colleagues can think about whether they want to support them or not. He'll also think about whether they duplicate each other, whether there's anything defective about them that means they wouldn't work. And he takes all this into account, along with a sort of sensitive political calculation about what the House might actually want to agree to.
Because on the face of it, some amendments as they're laid down ahead of this debate seem to contradict each other. And if A happens, then B can't happen. So how does he deal with that?
So absolutely. So, and that is often because different MPs have different opinions about how to achieve possibly the same outcome, or, as you say, conflicting things that they want to see. And they will be have been seeing throughout this week what there is support for. And in the end, we might see what we saw with the meaningful vote, where some MPs decide not even to move their amendment for decision, even though the Speaker has selected it, because they want to see what the House might think about a different amendment. So it's all very complicated in the final analysis.
If some of the amendments do get through, we've talked about Yvette Cooper's being slightly different, but if some of the other amendments do get through, what does the government have to do? How much pressure is there on ministers to take any notice?
Well, this is a motion, as you said. It's not a piece of legislation. It doesn't legally bind the government to do anything. These amendments would have, as you said, political weight with the government. They would put significant political pressure on the government to act, but it wouldn't actually be compelled to do so. Whether it could go directly against something that Parliament had asked it to do in these circumstances is a moot point, I think.
Now, the government obviously has got then at some point to have another meaningful vote. Under its plans at the moment, we're supposed to be leaving on the 29th of March. Is it actually technically still possible for the government to get everything through that it needs to for that to happen?
I think it's extremely challenging. The government has said there are at least 5 pieces of primary legislation that the government would like to have on the statute book in case of no deal. If the government's deal does get through, then the key thing that has to happen is the withdrawal agreement bill has to pass. That's just that one key piece of legislation. But doing either of those things is going to be challenging. And at the moment, we're seeing the government not even scheduling subsequent stages of those bills because they're worried about them being amended and suffering defeats, which might have implications for the sort of bigger picture of Brexit. So government is not progressing legislation, and yet the time frame is shrinking. So it's a very difficult situation.
As ever, watch this space. Dr. Hannah White, thank you very much indeed for coming onto the programme.